Okay, so today's topic is a clinical chart, and this is the practical part of pharmacology. And since last class we have started the clinical chart, and there will be five clinical chart. So not yesterday, from today onwards only. So clinical chart, I will be taking two charts. That is one gingival hyperplasia and fetal Haddington syndrome. Both are related with phenytoin. So we'll discuss one by one, and I'll discuss the theoretical part of phenytoin, which comes under the anti-epileptic drugs. I guess last class, Sarita madam has taken already 2 or 3 clinical charts. So here onwards, this gingival hyperplasia can be known as gingival enlargement also, and gum hypertrophy also. So these are the figures showing different forms or different types of gingival enlargement. The first one being the inflammatory gingival enlargement. This is basically because of the inflammation in the gums. This is medication-induced gingival enlargement, and this would be our topic for main discussion, the medication-induced gingival enlargement. This happens because of the adverse effect due to the ongoing treatment of because of any drug. So that is medication-induced gingival enlargement. Then we have which comes through a hereditary genetic problem and by birth, that is the hereditary gingival fibromatosis. And then the next is the systemic cause of gingival enlargement. What is gingival enlargement? So now this is this may be because of many reasons, and the pathophysiology, what happens there, and differential diagnosis, and everything we'll discuss in the foregoing PowerPoints. Here, this gingival enlargement as a side effect of phenytoin was first reported by Kimball in the year 1939. So Kimball was the first person who reported the phenytoin-induced gingival enlargement. And this high-risk population for dental caries. Now, the person who are suffering from xerostomia, diabetes, alcoholics, who are tobacco users, and those with Down syndrome, and already are having gingival hyperplasia, they are the higher risk population for dental caries and periodontal diseases. So you'll see, you'll come across the dental problems among these type of patients, among the patients who are having these problems. Now, gingival hyperplasia may be caused by, if it is a drug induced, it can be caused by the 3 major group of drug. The first being the anti-epileptic, mainly that the phenytoin. Then comes the calcium channel blocker like nifedipine on prolonged use, and then we have the cyclosporine. Next, we have idiopathic familial gingival fibromatosis. This is and several syndrome-related disorder appear similar to the gingival enlargement. Removal of medication often reverses the drug-induced form. So when you have drug-induced gingival enlargement, then it may appear similar to the fibromatosis, and if you withdraw the drug because of which the gingival enlargement is there, then it can be reversed or surgery may be needed. Then we have linear gingival erythema, where it is seen in patients with advanced HIV infection and probably represent immune deficiency and decrease in neutrophil activity. So as we already know that the people suffering from HIV infection, they will have the compromised immune system. So the people having compromised immune deficiency, especially with HIV and having decreased neutrophil activity, there we can give there we can see the gingival erythema. The next is diffuse or focal gingival swelling. It may be a feature of early or late acute myelomonocytic leukemia. So in this type of leukemia, in its early phase or the late phase, we can see the focal gingival swelling or diffuse gingival swelling, as well as other lymphoproliferative disorders. So some kinds of leukemia, you will see this gingival swelling or gingival enlargement. We talked about the drug-induced gingival enlargement, and we talked that what all group of drug like calcium channel blocker, phenytoin, and cyclosporine may cause gingival enlargement. Among anticonvulsant, the aromatic anticonvulsant can induce pseudolymphoma syndrome and then may lead to the gingival hyperplasia. Cyclosporine has a very impressive result in renal transplants, and this is the usual drug which is given in renal transplant patient. Now there are well-defined toxicity of use of cyclosporine in the renal transplant patient, like nephrotoxicity, hepatotoxicity, hirsutism, tremor, diabetes, and out of all these, we have one more which is known as gingival hyperplasia. So you can say that gingival hyperplasia is one of the important side effects for cyclosporine also, which comes in the renal transplant patient. Then we have gum hypertrophy in leukemic infiltration, which is seen most commonly in monocytic leukemia. What is the pathogenesis? Now, see, the pathogenesis of this very disease is not well defined. Many hypotheses are there, but some inflammatory changes is seen, which is very common part in any of the hypotheses. So we'll see it point-wise, then I'll show it in the flow chart manner. The pathogenesis: increased connective tissue production secondary to bacterial inflammation. Increased connective tissue production secondary to bacterial inflammation. Now we see that upon bacterial infection, you may see the patient may appear come with a problem of gingival enlargement, and then that is known as a secondary infection, secondary gingival enlargement. Possible increased gingival fibroblast proliferation and or connective tissue production secondary to the inducing drug. So this is the main part of our discussion, where we have the gingival enlargement because of the drug. So drug induced. In that we can see there may be a fibroblast proliferation or connective tissue production that may lead to gingival enlargement. Otherwise also, in the drug-induced gingival enlargement may be because of the many biochemical changes, alteration, or it affects the biochemical changes, which ultimately comes with the gingival enlargement, and it may affect the cation channel. Now, research which characterized cellular folate uptake as dependent upon both active transport through cation channel and passive diffusion. Now, the last 3 points are very related points. Here, what we saw in the third point is like inducing drug may affect the biochemical component, the biochemical part, by inhibiting some cation channels. So what happens if it inhibits the cation channel? What is the significance of the cation channel? Now, cation channels are responsible for the folate uptake through active or passive diffuser. Now folate, what is the role of folate? Folate is the important biochemical substance here which may cause this gingival enlargement. When there is decreased folate uptake within gingival fibroblast due to inhibitory effect of inducing drug with regard to cellular folate active transport. Now we know that folate can be transported through the cation channel actively or passively. Okay. Now, drug which causes gingival enlargement may inhibit the cation channel. So, if the cation channel is inhibited, that means folate uptake will be inhibited. When folate uptake is inhibited, then there would be gingival enlargement with regard to decreased folate uptake. Next is research which demonstrated that drug-induced gingival overgrowth. Drug-induced gingival overgrowth. This appears to be related to an increased amount of connective tissue. So there are more amount of connective tissue found in gingival overgrowth. Research which demonstrated that activation of collagenases appears to be complicated and involves matrix metalloproteinases biochemistry. So here we have that it was seen that drug-induced gingival overgrowth, we see that more amount of metalloproteinases was there. Also, it was demonstrated that folate is necessary for amino acid and protein synthesis. Folate was necessary for amino acid and protein synthesis, and that was also inhibited by if drug inhibits the cation channel. Now, the possibility that drug-induced gingival overgrowth may be related to insufficient activation of collagenases. Insufficient activation of collagenases necessary to degrade excess connective tissue. Now, if there are excess connective tissue and if they are not degraded properly, then that will be deposited causing the overgrowth. So, there is a possibility that there would be insufficient production or activation of already produced collagenases, which are responsible for degrading the connective tissue. The possibility that drug-induced gingival overgrowth may be secondary to insufficient degradation of excessive connective tissue. These two are interrelated points. So we have drug-induced gingival overgrowth mechanism, how it happens. So like if it is, it can be induced through calcineurin inhibitor, the calcium channel blocker, the anticonvulsant. Then there would be inhibitory effect on cation channel. That is responsible for the uptake of folate. So decreased, when this is inhibited, there will be decreased cellular folate uptake within gingival fibroblast. Then changes in TIMP and MMP and MMP2 synthesis, which will cause the failure to activate collagenases, and then activation of collagenases does not happen. That means there will be decreased degradation of connective tissue, causing to increase accumulation of connective tissue in the gums, and that causes gingival enlargement. If there is bacterial inflammation, so bacterial inflammation causing connective tissue production, and through multiple steps it will lead to this decreased degradation of connective tissue and then ultimately to gingival enlargement. Inducing drug causation of fibroblast proliferation or increased production of connective tissue. When if a drug is there and it may cause increased production of the connective tissue itself, not the degradation. Here degradation is reduced. Here production is increased, and ultimately if production is increased, not much amount will be degraded, and then there will be accumulation of connective tissues causing gingival enlargement. This is a table. This is the table taken from Harrison. Now, this is the drug-induced gingival overgrowth inducing drugs. We have discussed that this can be caused by anticonvulsant, mainly the phenytoin. This is PhD is phenytoin, carbamazepine, valproic acid rare. Then anti-calcineurin inhibitor, cyclosporine, azathioprine, mycophenolate, mofetil, and calcium channel blocker like amlodipine, nifedipine, felodipine, natriandipine, verapamil, and diltiazem. So this group of drug is given for epilepsy, this group is given for immunosuppression, and this group is given for hypertension. Now, incidence of phenytoin causing this gingival overgrowth is 10 to 83%, 10 to 83%, whereas cyclosporin is 7 to 80% and calcium channel blocker is 30 to 50%. So we can compare here that this is much lower. Otherwise, this has a wide range, okay, from the minimum to maximum. Mechanism of action of anticonvulsant, this I will discuss later also in a little details, because everything about the mechanism of action has been discussed in anticonvulsant chapter itself. So it blocks the sodium channel, and anticalcinurin, these are binding a protein in cytosol through calmodulin, and calcium channel blocker by blocking the calcium channel. Now, what are the different types? In the beginning only, I showed the 4 photos of different types of gingival enlargement. That I'll explain over here. The first is inflammatory gingival enlargement. Now, this from the name only we can get some idea that it is inflammatory problem and inflammatory response, which occurs when plaque, that collection of food debris and bacteria, accumulates on teeth, and this results patient not accomplishing with effective oral hygiene, which means that if the person is having bad oral hygiene, in that case first plaque happens, and then there is inflammatory responses occurs, which leads to the inflammatory gingival enlargement. Gums are affected mostly, and they become tender, soft, red, and it bleeds very easily. If a person takes care of the oral hygiene, then it can be resolved very effectively. The next is medication-induced gingival enlargement. Medication-induced gingival enlargement. The gum tissue in such a case are typically formed non-tender, pale pink in color and do not bleed easily. So this is ours, that medication-induced or phenytoin-induced gingival enlargement, where we can see the gums form, where here it was soft, non-tender, it was tender here, pale pink, here it was red, and do not bleed easily, here it bleeds very easily. Now coming to the hereditary gingival fibromatosis. This is a rare hereditary condition. This is a rare hereditary condition that usually develops during childhood, although some cases may not become evident until adulthood. Though it would be there from the birth or at the lesser age also, but it will not be obvious. So the person becomes adult, and then he will come to know about this, the hereditary gingival fibromatosis. The next is systemic cause of gingival enlargement. There are numerous physiological and systemic conditions that may promote localized and or generalized gingival enlargement, such as pregnancy, hormonal imbalance, and leukemia. So these are the systemic cause for gingival enlargement, in which we have pregnancy, hormonal imbalance, and leukemia. What are the possible findings? Form painless nodular enlargement of the interdental papilla, limited to the keratinized portion of gingiva, and it extends to the facial and lingual gingival margins. In severe cases, a huge fold of hypertrophied gingival tissue is observed covering the crowns of the teeth. So see, it becomes severe when it covers the crown only, then it's a severe condition. Okay, the person will have much problem in chewing the food also. At times, it appears firm and pale pink, drug-induced, with minute lobulation pouting from underneath the gingival margin, delineated by a groove of tissue which does not bleed on touch. So only protrusion will be there. If there is secondary inflammation, then the gingiva appears smooth and the enlargement is greater in maxillary and anterior mandibular region. So you can just mark the location, maxillary and anterior mandibular region. Typically, it is not seen in edentulous areas of gingiva. Next, we have the complication due to drug-induced gingival enlargement. Functional difficulties, aesthetic concern, the increased incidence of caries. So you need to take a lot of care to your teeth when this happens. So regular washing and oral hygiene is very necessary. Delayed eruption of teeth, that it takes time to for the new teeth to come. Pathological drifting of teeth, then prolonged retention of the primary dentition, then diastemas and spacing problem, poor plaque control leading to periodontal complications. So these are the main complications because of drug-induced gingival enlargement. Coming to the differential diagnosis here, false enlargement of gingival tissue. This is a pseudo enlargement of the gingiva, which is actually because of the enlarged underlying bony tissue. The gingiva here has no abnormality. So there you may feel that it is gingival enlargement, but actually this is not a gingival enlargement. This is not a problem of gingiva, but there is a problem with the underlying bone, which is enlarged. So it feels like it is having, the person is having gingival enlargement, DIGO. Inflammation, an abscess present as a localized painful swelling which is tender. Chronically inflamed gingival tissue is red or violaceous, smooth and bleeds on touch. A familial or hereditary, the tendency runs in family. The gingiva is pink, non-tender, involves the attached gingiva, the gingival margin and the interdental papilla, and has a firm and leathery consistency. Soft. So next is tumor. These are localized, hard in consistency, rat-like, febrile and bleed on touch. Physiological state, at puberty or pregnancy, many a time gingival enlargement can be there. If there is deficiency of vitamin C, it may produce tender bleeding of gingiva. Then systemic disease like leukemias, tuberculosis, sarcoidosis can be corroborated hematologically to confirm the diagnosis. In all these conditions, a thorough history, physical examination and investigations, including a biopsy, may be required to confirm the etiology. So in all these conditions, you may see the gingival enlargement, but you need to know whether it is the gingival enlargement or not through many tests and diagnosis parameters. Now, how do you treat? Treatment and management. The aim of the treatment is of DIGO, that is drug-induced gingival overgrowth, is to alleviate the discomfort. The person will have a lot of discomfort while chewing, while talking, while brushing teeth and all. So the main aim is to decrease the discomfort. Okay. So this can be more of a cosmetic treatment, or in many cases, the wide range of treatment is necessary. The modality of treatment can be medical and surgical. So the first of all, the oral hygiene has to be taken care of. The plaque removal, including periodic scaling, tooth surface cleaning should be done. Then control of inflammation, including non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, antibiotics to control infection, and topical application of antifungal medication. So if it is like bacterial or fungal induced, then you have to take care the patient has to be given the antibiotics, proper antibiotics. If it is inflammatory, then anti-inflammatory drugs like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug has to be given, or the topical drugs has to be applied, like nystatin, antifungal. Now, if it is a drug-induced, the discontinuation of the drug should be there. which is the causative agent for the gingival overgrowth, if you know. Then discontinuation of drug or switching over to another drug without the same side effect can be considered. So if the person is having gingival overgrowth due to phenytoin, you may think about the switching of the patient to any other antiepileptic drugs which do not have this type of problem. Then folate supplementation to be started. So if everything is to be done with the folate uptake only, the gingival overgrowth, then you need to supplement it from outside. So that has to be started. Then if the patient is not responding through the oral hygiene and the non-pharmacological or the pharmacological treatment, then the surgery is the choice. So surgical treatment is to be considered in patients not responding to medical management or cases that recur despite adequate plague control. An adequate period should be allowed to elapse after medical therapy or discontinuation of the drug induced before surgery is considered. So there should be a proper gap between the end of the treatment and the start of the surgery. Surgical method include traditional scalpel gingivectomy and periodontal flap surgery. So these are the surgery which are available for gingival overgrowth. Electrocautery may be used in difficult cases, children, or where the gingiva is fragile and likely to bleed. So there this can be used. CO2 laser has a wavelength of 10,600 nanometer, hence it is readily absorbed by water and therefore is very effective in surgery of soft tissue with high water content like the gingiva. Blood vessels up to a diameter of 0.5 millimeter can be sealed effectively and provide a dry field for better visibility of the surgical field. A laser is preferred over the scalpel as it has a strong bactericidal and homeostatic effect. So laser therapy, treatment or laser surgery or electrocautery or the other type of surgery, scalpel surgery can be opted. So the different method has different advantages. So based on the need and advantage, a proper surgery method has to be chosen. Now coming to the next clinical chart, that fetal Haydn-Cohen syndrome. So in the clinical chart, see, any figure can be kept. Here the gum hypertrophy, the gingival enlargement, the photo of a person's teeth and gum would be shown to you or would be given to identify. So, and based on that photo, there would be questions like name the drug which can cause this type of problem. Then the question may be given to identify the given picture. You have to identify saying the name of the disease, and then if asked, then what group of drug. So you need, if it is only one drug mentioned, then put one drug. If it is 2, 3, so based upon the number of question asked, you need to tell. If mechanism, so folate deficiency, you can say, or inflammatory, the increased synthesis or decreased degradation of connective tissue, you can say. The treatment wise, what are the treatment modalities possible in this type of gingival overgrowth? So you just have to name in short. Next is fetal Haydn-Cohen syndrome. Again, it is related with phenytoin only. So Haydn-Cohen is a group under which phenytoin comes. So the type of Haydn-Cohen syndrome is Dalton embryopathy. This is phenytoin. Okay. Then phenytoin embryopathy and Haydn-Cohen embryopathy. Fetal Haydn-Cohen syndrome is a characteristic pattern of mental and physical birth defect that result from maternal use of anti-seizure, anticonvulsant, and phenytoin during pregnancy. So it has everything to do with phenytoin, which is an anti-epileptic drug from Haydn-Cohen group. So if a lady is having epilepsy and then she has been on the drug phenytoin, Dalton is a brand name, phenytoin for a longer period of time, and then if she conceives, then there is a higher possibility of fetal Haden-Doyen syndrome. And it affects the mental as well as physical defects in the newborn. Approximately 5 to 10% of fetuses exposed to phenytoin develop disorder. So not all fetuses who are exposed to the maternal intake administration of phenytoin, they develop this Haden-Doyen syndrome. Only 5 to 10% they develop. What are the characteristic features? So you can see distinctive skull and facial features. Then growth deficiency you can see. Then underdeveloped or hypoplastic nails of the fingers and toes, and or mild developmental delays. You can see the cleft lip or the cleft palate, or both cleft lip and cleft palate. There would be changes in the head circumference, a head circumference that is smaller than would be expected based upon the infant age and gender. So as per age and gender, the head circumference will not be normal, which is called macrocephaly. Then skeletal malformation, particularly of the fingers or hands. There may be their skeletal malformation. Some infants may have increased hair on the body, face, or the scalp. There may be prenatal growth deficiency also, so a closer look has to be there on the growth of the fetus. Postnatal growth deficiency may also be there. The patient may have the flat or broad bridge of the nose, a short nose, or the eyes that are farther apart from each other than the usual. So you can see the distance between the two eyes would be much more than the normal. Crossed eye, then eyelid that droop, that ptosis of eyes, so drooping of eye, you can see. A large wide mouth, you can see. Then malformed ear, you will see. Mild webbing of the neck and microcephaly. You can all see these things. So these are the different feature. You can see the fingers, you can see here the fingernails. You can see here, the fingernails over here. Here the overgrowth, in the neck portion you can see here. The nails you can see over here. Then cleft palate you can see here inside, and then here is cleft lip plus cleft palate you can see. So these are the features of characteristic features of fetal Haden-Doyen syndrome. What are the causes? Now, a specific amount of phenytoin ingestion required to cause this disorder has not been determined. So how much phenytoin administration or intake will cause, we don't know yet. It is not known whether the adverse effect of phenytoin during fetal development are due to drug itself or any metabolite. So phenytoin when taken, it will be converted to its metabolite, active or inactive metabolite, right? So we do not know whether the fetal Haden-Doyen syndrome is mainly because of the phenytoin itself or due to the metabolites which is produced in the body after metabolism. Women with mutations in methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase gene are at increased risk of having an infant with fetal Haden-Doyen syndrome. So mutated gene, particular gene, that this one, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, if it is there, then the person may produce a fetal Haden-Doyen baby, affected baby. Diagnosis. A diagnosis is made clinically based upon identification of characteristic symptoms in an affected infant in conjunction with history of phenytoin exposure during gestation. So history is very important in this case, and then characteristics which I just discussed you need to assess and then diagnose. Prevention. It is recommended that a woman may be treated with a single anticonvulsant prior to conception and throughout pregnancy. No need of putting the patient on 2 or more than 2 anticonvulsant drugs. Women taking phenytoin should take folic acid supplement before conception and during pregnancy as a preventive measure against malformation. Treatment. It is directed toward the specific symptoms that are apparent in each individual. So specific characteristics are there for an individual, specific symptoms are there in an individual, so you need to treat as per the need only. Affected children may benefit from occupational, physical, speech therapy. Various methods of rehabilitative and behavioral therapy may be beneficial. Additional medical, social, vocational services may be necessary. Psychosocial support of the entire family is very, very important. Then cleft palate or cleft lip surgery can be chosen. Now, this was all about the clinical chart 3 and 4. 4 and 5. Clinical chart 4 and 5. Now, something related with the theoretical part of anti-epileptic drug or the phenytoin. Epilepsy, we have already discussed this. Epilepsy is a heterogeneous symptom complex. It's a chronic disorder in which recurrent seizures comes. And seizure is a finite episode of brain dysfunction resulting from abnormal discharge of cerebral neurons. It can be through many ways. The reduction of inhibitory synaptic activity, that is GABA mediated activity, or enhancement of glutamate mediated activity. Neuron may undergo depolarization and there may be effect in the sodium channel opening. There can be genetic juvenile myoclonic epilepsy or childhood absence epilepsy. This is again the classification of seizure based on Harrison 17th edition. Partial seizure, simple partial and complex partial seizure with secondary generalization. Then we have primarily generalized seizure, absence, tonic-clonic, tonic, atonic, myoclonic, and unclassified seizure, neonatal and infantile. I'm not going to discuss any of the type of partial seizures and any other type of seizure. I'll just skip on this. Generalized seizure, okay, tonic-clonic seizure, infantile. But the cause of seizure and epilepsy, I've discussed it, so let it be. Mechanism of action, in short, I have discussed GABA and glutamate mediated or the sodium dependent depolarization is inactivated. So hydrantoin or phenytoin, it's a diphenyl hydrantoin. This is the major drug, okay, which is responsible for the gum hypertrophy and then hydrantoin syndrome. It has anti-seizure activity without causing generalized depression of CNS. Mechanism of action, it inhibits sodium dependent action potential in frequency dependent manner. Actually, it do not inhibit, it prolong the inactivated state of sodium channel. This particular line is very important when you write the mechanism of action of phenytoin. Prolongation of inactivated state of sodium channel. It will prolong the state in which there is no sodium transfer. At 5 to 10 fold higher concentration, it will enhance the GABA mediated action. It will decrease the synaptic release of glutamate and also alters the calcium influx. So we have here the sodium channel opens over here, okay, and this is closed inactivated channel, and then repolarization and then depolarization happens and back to the normal. So this inactivated channel state is prolonged here. If it is for 1 to 2 milliseconds, it will be there for 4 to 5 milliseconds. So that one is there. So another figure is like this is resting, this is activated, and this is inactivated. So inactivated prolongation, inactivated state will be prolonged for phenytoin. Pharmacokinetic, elimination kinetic, it is a non-linear, degraded by CYP2C9 or 10 or CYP2C19. Metabolism is saturable, well absorbed from GIT, then bound to albumin, excreted well in urine, accumulates in brain, liver, muscles, and fat. T-half is 12 to 36 hours, average 24 hours. Plasma concentration 10 to 20 microgram per ml. Fosphenytoin is another drug, congener of phenytoin. It's a water-soluble prodrug metabolized to phenytoin by phosphatase. So fosphenytoin will be metabolized to phenytoin first by the enzyme phosphatases. Toxicity, so you should remember the toxicity: gingival hyperplasia, hirsutism, rash, then neutropenia, osteomalacia, hyperglycemia, fetal head and neck syndrome, cleft palate, hair, lip, macrocephaly. At high plasma level, ataxia, vertigo, diplopia, nystagmus, drowsiness, mental confusion, drowsiness, hallucination, disorientation can be seen. Intravenously, if it is given, hypotension may be seen, or cardiac arrhythmia or CNS depression may be seen. So I'll not touch upon these things. The phenytoin is the drug of choice, the second drug of choice for partial or complex seizure. Then generalized tonic-clonic seizure is a drug of choice. Then we have fosphenytoin in case of status epilepticus. So this was all about the clinical chart number 4 and 5. That was all about gingival hyperplasia and fetal head and neck syndrome. Thank you so much.